Welcome to Flat Earth Debate Live. I'm your host, Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon, and join button if you'd like to become a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member and keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you would like to support the channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they are live, and there's also a PayPal, Patreon, and crypto link in the info box below the video. Most importantly, if you'd like to join the discussion, simply mute the page you are currently watching, then click the link in the info box below this video to join the panel and express your views on the nature of Earth. If you do join, please don't swear. If you do, you'll be ejected, and if you are, please don't try to rejoin the stream using sock accounts. You'll be warmly welcomed back on the next stream. Please also share the show on social media. Sharing the show obviously increases the live audience, but this in turn increases the chances of a more diverse panel, so please share the show on Facebook and Twitter. Now, we are joined by 10th Man, Neil, Refracted Curvature, and a whole bunch of people in Discord, so welcome one and all.
Yeah. How's everybody doing?
Good morning.
Hey, with such a lengthy pre-show, it's just hard not to be hyped up.
Oh, don't break his balls.
Yeah, it's dealing with technical issues, as I will be for some time. I see in my foreseeable future, tech issues are going to be a thing that I'm having to deal with. But there we go. Let's not let it distract from the main part of the show. Any evidence of a physical geometric sphere-edge horizon, formerly known as the curve of the Earth?
Now, by evidence, what can I bring to you that would be evidence?
Huh?
What can I bring that you would accept evidence?
Evidence is proof.
So when they say, if you watch a boat go into the distance, it disappears bottom first, right?
Well, that's non sequitur.
And it falls over the edge of the Earth.
Well, so that's a begging the question fallacy. So it started off non sequitur, and then just assumed your outcome, begging the question. So you assume that the horizon is a physical leading edge to a sphere, blocking your view? No, we've debunked that with the Black Swan, 1st Jan 2020.
Then I let it go. I was talking to a guy last night, and he just kept going on and on. You haven't proven it. Where is the boat going? Wouldn't accept anything. Like it's too far out of your view. It's not falling over no edge.
Hey, Neil.
Whose claim?
Neil.
Yes, sir.
When you look at the horizon from a seashore, and you have clouds, blue sky, and the water, at the furthest distance, what do you see?
The horizon.
Touching the clouds.
Yes.
What happened to the sky in between?
That don't count.
Did the sky go over a curve of the Earth? Did the Earth curve block the sky?
Not at all.
Yeah, same thing with boats.
Well, it's the formulation of the claim itself, right? Like,
hello, guys.
If he's asking, hey, Arlen, if he's asking for you or saying things like you haven't proven it, he obviously doesn't understand how a claim structure works or knowledge itself.
Is somebody going to explain to me what this weird new anti-flat earther claim is about Coriolis in a 2D straight line? Because it left me really confused.
What was that? What was the buzzing sound?
Not me.
Oh, okay. Are we going to get an answer to Arwen's question, or is it going to be left rhetorical? If not, we will move on.
John was speaking about it in chat. This is the first I'm hearing of it.
All right.
Could ask him when he comes back on. Something happened. I heard a buzz and then he was gone.
Not the buzzing. Arwen, just repeat what you just said.
I was just wondering about something that was talked about in Master B, and that left me really confused. Was it Master B? About a Coriolis effect on a 2D plane in a straight line or something. It was just like, what?
Yeah, that came from John.
Right.
You be more specific, which John?
Refracted curvature. It's something with Rachie00000, and him speaking about it. Hopefully, he'll come back to clarify.
Okay. In the meantime, is there any evidence that you can acquire an elevation angle from a curved baseline?
I'd like to see them do it without taking the measurements from the center of the Earth. Do it right from the surface. On
In
your
a
ball,
2D
though. It's got to be
realm,
on
you
your
could-
ball.
Sorry. I was just saying, in a 2D realm, you could, because everything is flat then.
They're not taking measurements from the center of the Earth. They're taking it from the surface of the Earth. In the cartoon
Correct.
drawing, they take it to the center of the Earth.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I want to see them do it on their ball Earth, not on a piece of paper. But right on the Earth that you claim is spherical.
Well, you already know the answer to that. They have to draw a tangent plane. They need a flat surface, so they can't even do it on that. So they've already answered the question. They can't.
Yep. Did y'all cover Coriolis already?
No,
we
we're
were
waiting for you.
We were waiting for you. Any evidence of axial rotation of the Earth-based variety?
Well, as I hear it, and you know how I like repeating claims, Earth-based Coriolis is a straight, two-dimensional straight line traveling one direction, and like if you're on a train, throw a ball up in the air, and it looks like it just goes up and down, but it's actually taking a curved path.
So if you toss a ball up and down in a train, it just goes up and down with respect to your reference frame. However, if you were to watch the ball from outside of the train, then you'd still just see the ball going up and down in the train. I mean, what curved path can it take? The only curve that can occur in that regard is if you throw the ball out the window, and then you'd watch it seem to whiz past, like backwards at a vast rate. Not because it actually moves backwards at a vast rate, you've moved away from it as it leaves the train window. That's not Coriolis, though. Coriolis is the deflection you observe from a rotating platform. So if that was a train going in a circle, round and round and round in a circle, and you were sat on top of it, anything that wasn't moving round with you in a circle would look like it was moving when it wasn't. So the building just in front of you would come towards you and then disappear out of you, come towards you, disappear out of you. Well, the idea is you say, well, wow, that building's taking a path towards me and then away, towards me. No, it isn't. It's fixed into the ground, but because you're moving, the illusion is that things do stuff that they're not really doing. So in the case of a roundabout and a ball, roundabout spins, balls tossed over the top of it in a straight line, but because you're on a roundabout spinning watching the ball seems to curve. That's actual Coriolis, 2 reference frames. So when they try and put it in a sealed environment, are they suggesting that their globe Earth is a sealed environment? Where's the container? On their globe Earth, containment is required, but any evidence you can have gas pressure without necessary antecedent of a container?
Well, hold on before we go on. Because you didn't describe it the way I just did, you have presented a straw man of the globe claim. That's seriously where they're at.
Well, I know what Coriolis Effect is. And I can go to National Geographic and have him example it. And the graphics I used on my most recent Wolfie 6020 whooping video were National Geographic examples with them detailing Coriolis Effect exactly as I've detailed it. With them showing 4 people sat on a roundabout, a ball being tossed between them, but moving in a curved path after they throw it. Well, the curve that they see is a not actual curve. The ball just travels straight after thrown by the person on the roundabout. The reason it reaches the person next to them is because they're rotating after the ball's been thrown from the roundabout. That's not an inertial reference frame, and into the inertial reference frame. So from the non-inertial spinning reference frame to the inertial, resulting in you viewing it, seeing it seem to curve.
And then they would just say that you were straw manning them. That would be, that's where they're at with their response. They're saying,
excellent rebuttal.
they're pointing out at, huh?
I said, excellent rebuttal.
Right, yeah. By you pointing out what actual Coriolis effect is, an apparent effect, they're with two reference frames, they're then saying that that's a straw man for their position, which means that they're...
Globiolus is their actual position if they're an anti-flat earther. If you're a globe believer, then you believe Earth turns underneath things not attached and they will drift from your vantage point on the ground. That's Coriolis effect. Globe Earth claims to have Coriolis effect. So globers think things drift because they're moving over a platform that's turning. That would be turning Earth. So that effect is akin to the stars. Earth is the thing turning, the stars are not, according to their claim. So if that is the case, Earth's turning underneath the stars as a non-inertial turning reference frame. That's Coriolis effect. Right, well, I understand what that is. So you put that to the anti-flat earther. You claim 15 degrees an hour of drift, that's Coriolis effect. It does not happen. They turn around and reposition your claim, after claiming it's a straw man, according to you, as a claim of globiolus, which is where Brian will hopefully step in and explain the difference. Or not the difference, just what globiolus is.
Globiolus involves the conservation of linear momentum, so it has absolutely nothing to do with an axial rotation of anything. It involves a linear conservation of linear momentum, and it involves a changing of actual miles per hour speeds from latitude to latitude. So they just take the distance around the latitude, and they then state at what miles per hour that you would have to go around that latitude or whatever. Tis total and utter nonsense. They don't understand that if the 48th latitude north and the 27th latitude north are both part of a 15 degree an hour axial part of something that's moving at 15 degrees of an hour of axial rotation, then the whole lot is moving at 15 degrees an hour. You know, it either is or it isn't. And as you said, Nathan, the claim is that the sun rises and sets due to Earth rotation, and that the stars are moving due to Earth rotation. This is the claim, right? But they're now repositioning it into, in particular, Craig McNeil, Fight the Flat Earth, and others, that the Coriolis effect, or force as they call it, right, which is just globiolus, happens different over a 3D sphere than it will over a 2D children's roundabout. Because there's no latitudes on the children's roundabout to change the speed, the linear miles per hour speed, which has absolutely nothing to do with the 15 degree per hour axial rotation that is actually being claimed.
They understand that a roundabout isn't two-dimensional?
No, they don't understand that.
The direction of travel that you'd move along it if you were experiencing Coriolis effect, i.e. you're in a car travelling around a roundabout, like continuously, and then one of your passengers leans out of the window, looks up at the sky and sees an aeroplane and goes, "Wow, look at it doing spirals." And you go, "No, that's us on the roundabout going round and round and round." But the direction of your travel on the non-inertial reference frame is two-dimensional.
But as I said to them this morning, I put this to Craig as well, if a bird flies directly over the top of a rotating sphere or a rotating disc, and both the sphere and disc are rotating at the same rate, the same axial rotation rate, and they both have the same radius value, right? What is the difference, right, for what you'll observe? If the bird is flying directly in a straight line over the top of both of those two items, someone looking up from from any of those two items is going to see the exact same thing, which is the bird's straight line path appearing to deviate and curve. But they said, no, there's going to be a difference all the time from 2D to 3D. This is what Craig is pushing at the moment.
Well, we've got to see the effect first. So for them to claim there's a difference, first we must see the effect. The effect of Coriolis is described on this diagram Anthony has presented. So the top is you looking over the top of a roundabout. So the circle is a roundabout, and if you just look at the top circle, like a top-down view, and imagine the ball being thrown over the top of the roundabout. So it travels in a straight line. Simple. The roundabout turns, the ball has no influence on the ball, it just travels straight. However, on the bottom frame, if you're sat on the roundabout and watch the same ball, which is travelling straight in actuality, you will watch it appear to take a curved path. That's the bottom circle. So you sat on the roundabout. So because you're sat on the roundabout, if you notice the bottom circle, the circle itself is not moving. So if you imagine that blue stripe that runs along this circle was one of the floorboards of your roundabout. Now, if you're looking down at the roundabout as you turn, you don't see anything happen. It just looks stationary. Hence, it's described as non-inertial. So that bottom roundabout isn't moving from your vantage point. So as you look at the ball looks like it's moving. But it's actually the roundabout that's turning, because you can't notice on a non-inertial reference frame you're part of the turning reference frame when you view something. So it's a not actual curved path that only appears to happen if you turn underneath.
I asked Craig to provide physical demonstrations of his claims involving 2D and 3D, and instead of providing the physical demonstrations because he knows he couldn't, his 3D demonstration claim was the Foucault pendulum. Just begging the question. So that's what the whole idea is, to get you back to the Foucault pendulum.
You could demonstrate this on a three-dimensional ball.
Hold on. Just before we launch into that, John. So he says the claim of Coriolis deflection, that's panned out by showing a Foucault pendulum, correct? That's his claim?
Yeah.
No worries. That's also Coriolis deflection. So the way the pendulum is claimed to prove that the Earth is spinning is as follows. The pendulum has one motion, and one motion only. Forwards and backwards. That is all it does ever. That is what you must understand for this to be explained to you. The pendulum does not actually drift. So the pendulum only moves back and forth. Now in Foucault's pendulum, as you stand as part of the non-inertial turning reference frame, same as you stood on the roundabout on screen, you don't see the turning because you're part of the reference frame, like the floorboards on this bottom circle. But what you do see is the pendulum seeming to drift and knock over the dominoes. Now, the pendulum isn't the thing that's actually drifting. It's a pendulum. It only moves back and forward. So why is it claimed to knock over the dominoes? Well, that's an apparent deflection caused by the claim that Earth turns underneath the pendulum. So that's Coriolis deflection, a claim that Earth turns under the inertial reference frame the pendulum is in. Well, if Earth turns underneath the inertial reference frame the pendulum is in, then Earth is a non-inertial turning reference frame turning underneath an inertial reference frame, and that would shorten flight times, because a plane has left the turning reference frame and is now part of the inertial reference frame. And according to the Coriolis claim, Earth will turn underneath as a separate reference frame, as you saw in the pendulum, right? So from the ground, you look up at the plane, and like the bottom diagram, you see the plane look like it's taking a curved path. It isn't really taking a curved path. It just looks like it. Like the pendulum looks like it's drifting. It's not. It's actually claimed to be proving you turn underneath it. That's a claim of drift. If we have two reference frames and drift demonstrated in a pendulum or a gyroscope, Then we have drift in flight. And drones would launch off the ground and whiz away at whatever rate Earth is claimed to turn underneath them. Planes would have their flight times massively reduced. Hot air balloons would have continents coming towards them. Not because they can fly at 800 miles an hour, because the Earth would be turning underneath them at 800 miles an hour. They just ascend in a straight path. From the ground, looks like they're ascending in an arc. In reality, just going up as Earth turns underneath them, said nobody ever. So we point out that the claim is Earth turns underneath, that's the only way to induce Coriolis deflection, and not actual drift, observed because you are claimed to turn underneath stuff on a turning Earth, like footballs in Neil deGrasse Tyson's example. It took a curved path assisted by Earth's turn. Well, that's Earth turning under the ball, according to Tyson. Well, if it turns under the ball, it turns under the blimp, and it turns under the hot air balloon, and it turns under the drone, and it turns under the airliner. Shortening flight times, having drones whiz away at whatever rate Earth is claimed to turn at whatever position you are on it. It doesn't happen. We have no drift. Nothing's flying away 1,000 miles an hour when you launch it off the ground on the equator. It doesn't happen. Enter anti-flat Earth Simon Dan to tell me that my reference frames are ruined because the Earth doesn't demonstrate this deflection. The same deflection Craig is claiming in the pendulum. Earth turning under the pendulum. Right, Craig? That's Coriolis deflection. 15 degrees an hour drift in the pendulum because Earth's claimed to turn underneath it. So it better be sure to turn underneath other stuff. What's that? It doesn't. What is that, Simon Dan? Craig's reference frames used in his pendulum example are ruined. Dan? So, ding, 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 seconds out, round one. In the blue corner, we've got Simon Dan claiming reference frames ruined. And in the blue corner, we've got Fight the Fat Girth with his claim that there's two of them to prove Earth turns underneath pendulums in separate reference frames. Unlucky, lads, you'll have to duke it out. Maybe Tyson can be the ref.
Or, as I like to say, the what is it again? The pendulum, the faux cult pendulum. It's just a pendulum swinging back and forth. They set up things to happen, and then they just say, "Oh, look! Just presuppose for a moment that the Earth is actually spinning underneath you," as they swing the pendulum in front of your face like a hypnotist.
Yeah. What's this the guy's name who invented that technique? Mesmer? To mesmerize? That's all it is. It's a parlour trick. Now, if you understand the parlour trick, you understand that what they're claiming happens is Earth turns underneath a pendulum that only swings back and forth and knocks over dominoes as a result of the Earth turning underneath it. And if that's true, Earth's turning underneath stuff that's not attached to it. The pendulum claimed to be detached from the reference frame on a special gimbal device that holds it in position and swings around, keeping it in an inertial reference frame, so that Earth can turn underneath it, according to the parlour trick claim, giving us two reference frames on a turning Earth and flight reductions that don't happen, and drones drifting away that doesn't happen, and hot air balloons drifting away that doesn't happen.
Well, as I said to Craig, I told him exactly what you said, but in a shorter form, I said, flights east to west would be a lot shorter, and there'd be no flights west to east. And I pointed out that this is for the audience, not for you, not as a debate, or well, it can be used in a debate, but it's not necessary. But for the audience, especially new people, the pendulum that's being talked about, that has to be manned by somebody. You have to keep it moving and in the desired direction, right? Because the pendulum won't just swing in the direction they want it to swing. They have to make it go, because otherwise, if they don't, the pendulum will sit stationary, right? So if the Earth was moving, wouldn't all pendulums, anything even like a pendulum, a boxing bag, a hanging flower pot, wouldn't they all be moving all the time? But they're not.
A plumb bob.
But hang on, I'm not finished. Right? But more than that, right, if you go to the Los Angeles Observatory, right? The Griffith Observatory in Los Angeles, they have a four-chord pendulum there, right? And that moves constantly because they have an electromagnetic motor moving it all the time. And they move it in the desired direction. It's complete and utter rubbish. It doesn't work. It doesn't work. It doesn't happen like they say it does. It must be manned. It must be made to move, and it must be made to move in the desired direction, and it must be kept moving. So it has nothing to do with the movement of the Earth.
Right, so it's a machination. Absolutely.
I just want to go back to what John said before. John's words were, if you don't recite back my understanding of Coriolis, then it's a straw man argument, and that's what Rachie's falling for at the minute. Because they tell Rachie that Coriolis on their model refers to lat lines, longitude lines, you know, the vertical lines going up towards the poles. On their model, it relates to those lines, right? But in real world, it doesn't. In real world, it relates to drift. So because they've redefined the term, they apply it to lat lines that are longitudinal lines, whichever one it is. They apply it to that. And then they say, well, if there's no change north to south, then we wouldn't expect to see any. But that's only in their model, right? But two things. One, if you turn 90 degrees either way and go east or west, then you would expect to see drift, but it would be manifested itself slightly different. It would be in time. But secondly, it's a construct that they've created within their own model to limit the definition, so it only applies north and south. But in real world, it applies in all directions, and it varies between the effect. If you go with the rotation or against the rotation, you cover more distance or less distance, depending on whether you're going with it or against it. And it's got nothing to do with the direction. It applies in all directions because the thing below is supposed to be turning. And that's where Rachie's caught up in the reeds. She thinks that because they tell her it's a straw man argument if you say that it's in any other direction other than north or south. She thinks, and then that's the definition for Coriolis, but it's not. That's just their definition, the anti-flat earthers' redefinition. So when John said, if you don't redefine it or if you don't explain it the way I understand it, that's a straw man, that is exactly what they're doing. They're redefining the term to suit their model. And then if you go anywhere other than north and south, because they can explain it away, then that's a straw man argument. But even in their own model, if you went east and west, as Nathan correctly points out, the planes would travel more distance in a shorter amount of time because the Earth's turning underneath them. But because it's not defined that way in their model, they call it a straw man. Well, that's called lying, guys. It's intellectual dishonesty. And the effect of it is that people like Rachie that are asking genuine questions get caught up in the reeds. She's walking, talking, living example of the bullshit that they've got to push to confuse the hell out of it. And if you don't realise the sleight of hand, you're going to get caught up in the reeds as well. So I hope you're listening, Rachie, and I hope you realise that's where you are in the minute. You're in the reeds. I'm done.
This is it on screen for whoever's benefit, not just Rachie. Real trajectory. Apparent, meaning not actual trajectory. So the real trajectory, that if you follow this little line down here, meets this straight path that this ball is travelling. That's the real trajectory of the ball. Here's the apparent, not actual, trajectory. The trajectory you would observe if you were sat on the roundabout. That's a curved trajectory. Not really curved, just looks like it, aka apparent. Let's watch it one more time. Ball travels in a straight line, roundabout turns underneath. Real trajectory has nothing to do with the roundabout turning underneath, but if you're on the roundabout, it looks like it curves. Likewise, if you are watching a pendulum that only moves like this ball in a straight path, and you're part of a turning reference frame, it'll appear to knock over the dominoes. Not because it's taking a curved path, pendulums don't do that. They only move in a straight path. But because you're on a turning reference frame according to the globe Earth, the pendulum is knocking them over as it drifts. Not actual drift, apparent drift, Coriolis drift. 2 reference frames required. So I still stand by my what the hell is Craig going to do when Dan tells him his reference frames are ruined? Yo, Craig, Simon Dan, who's considerably larger than you, made it absolutely plain to hundreds of thousands of people that reference frames are ruined. My reference frames he incorrectly identified, and I don't claim them. But here we are finding out that you, Craig, Fight the Flat Earth, claims there's 2 reference frames, a pendulum in an inertial reference frame swinging back and forth, and the globe Earth turning beneath it. Second non-inertial turning reference frames. Those are ruined, Craig. Dan made it clear there's no drift. Things don't drift. Pendulums don't drift. No reference frames. They're ruined. So what the hell are you doing claiming that pendulums drift when Simon Dan's pointing out that there isn't any and giving me examples of men on trampolines that don't drift? Telling me that the reference frames you're claiming, Craig, are ruined. So, Simon Dan, to correctly ascribe the reference frames you told me were ruined to their rightful possessor, that would be Craig's reference frames are ruined. He's claiming 2 of them with this pendulum. So you better get on it, chop chop, Simon Dan. Going to jump down his throat like you jumped down mine and point out how wrong he is about these reference frames we don't observe occurring because Earth's not turning. Maybe you'd like to explain Coriolis to him because he thinks there's 2 reference frames and drift occurring in a pendulum. Dan. That's Craig, by the way, not me. I'll just watch you 2 tossers fight it out, shall I? Like I say, blue corner, no reference frames, ruined, Simon Dan, red corner, Craig, Fight the Flat Earth, 2 reference frames, pendulum appearing to drift as Earth turns beneath it. Right, Craig? Of course, that would shorten flight times, right? If Earth was turning underneath as a separate reference frames, then we'd watch that happen in the form of drift from the ground, like with your pendulum. That doesn't happen. Nothing's drifting away 1,000 miles an hour on the equator because it leaves a non-inertial turning reference frame and appears to drift from my vantage point. That never happens, Craig. Of course, me pointing that out would lead to someone like Simon Dan telling me that actually Craig's, reference frames are ruined because we don't example that in physical reality, only with parlour tricks. I thank you.
Can I say something? Can I say something real quick? This ain't new. Virus has been saying this for the longest time. And he's in chat saying, you see, Rachie understands the globe claims. But did you just hear what Anthony said? My goodness.
Sorry, do I need to stick up? No, that's okay. Sorry, Rachie understands what Coriolis is. Oh, excellent. So, what am I to believe? Should I believe that National Geographic have got it wrong? Or Rachie and Virus? Let's have a look again.
You believe...
There
we go.
You believe the one
Sorry,
that presents
real
the supporting
trajectory.
evidence?
Sorry, Rachie was in our chat yesterday telling me how the real trajectory is the trajectory that the ball travels when it's on the roundabout. That's what I was led to believe she was postulating yesterday. Do you see this real trajectory? That's a straight line, absolutely devoid of any influence from the roundabout. If the ball's on the roundabout, it's going to be actually curving. Whereas Coriolis Deflection, which this National Geographic video is very specifically detailing, has a real trajectory that's straight, not actually curving, and an apparent trajectory that is curving only because you're on a roundabout that's turning. That is Coriolis Effect, as detailed here. It's also in the Wikipedia page that Anthony brought up earlier, where it shows the exact same thing. That would be a non-inertial turning reference frame with you on it, and a ball moving in a straight path. The straight path being its actual trajectory, the apparently curved path being the what you see trajectory. Not really taking a curve, just seems that way because you're on a roundabout. Now, Rachie might think she understands this because the trolls have convinced them to accept their Globiolis explanation for what Coriolis is. Well, get them to square it with Neil deGrasse Tyson, who very specifically has Earth turning underneath a football to have an apparently curved path from the stand. That's what he's describing when he makes the claim that Earth has Coriolis effect. That's this. Ball travels straight, you and the goalpost and the Earth turn underneath it, according to Tyson. That's Coriolis. Of course, that would shorten flight times because the blimp film in the game would also have Earth turning underneath it.
Well, before Anthony and John goes, just very quickly, what Rachie should do is approach Wolfie and get Wolfie to come up with the data of the corrections that he makes for this Globiolis.
Oh, that would be great. Oh, I'd love to see his corrections for Coriolis. An effect that's not actual. You give us those numbers, Wolfie. Has somebody been pressing you for numbers and you've been fighting with Anthony about how you're correcting for Coriolis? a deflection that's only observable from a non-inertial turning reference frame? Oh, I'd love to see those numbers there. Yeah, definitely. I'll rub them right in your face in terms of not actual deflection being corrected for by this aeroplane. Sack him. Sack him before he kills someone.
Yeah, he's the person that she should go to. He should be able to provide all the evidence necessary for out rotation, because he claims to fly over a rotating out all the time.
Oh, Phil's in the cheerleading squad saying straw man, straw man. Okay, Phil.
Guys, it's obviously a straw man. If you don't accept the Earth is both turning underneath and turning at the same rate, then it's a straw man to assert anything else.
So who cares what they're saying from the chat? The unqualified straw man. Oh, really? Well, get in here, break down what we've detailed, bearing in mind none of it's our claim, just in case Simon Dan's watching and gets a bit confused and thinks he needs to jump in and tell me my reference frames are ruined. This is your claim. So you're saying we're misrepresenting your claim? Feel free to get in here and tell us how we're misrepresenting your claim. I will throw up the National Geographic example that very specifically details actual trajectories in a straight line and not actual trajectories in a curved one, with non-inertial turning reference frames turning beneath inertial reference frames. That's what I'll point out. And then I'll show the Wikipedia entry with a GIF that shows the same thing. And I'll ask you what you think it is when you say we misrepresent something that doesn't happen on Earth. I never observe anything taking a curved path. I don't toss balls through the air and watch them curve, because they don't.
Earth does not spin like a roundabout. It doesn't need to spin like a roundabout. It just needs to move underneath the
No, stop. Earth doesn't spin like a roundabout. Welcome to non-rotating Earth, then. The claim of a globe Earth is that it rotates at over 1,000 miles an hour on the equator. Like a roundabout. What are you saying? It doesn't? Would that be one of the anti-flat Earth replies that seems to throw back our rebuttal at us like it's a defence? It's not turning like a roundabout? That sounds like a Blue Marble quote.
What would it be turning like then?
So just not
like
turning. Not turning like a roundabout with a ball turn over it with Coriolis drift observed from the roundabout. No, that's right. It's not like that at all, is it? It would be if we were turning, we'd have Coriolis deflection, precisely as the globe Earth claims. We don't because it isn't turning.
This is coming from the guy that thought a 10-kilogram pumice stone would get to the bottom of the Mariana Trench in 40 minutes, not realising that it floats on water. Same guy.
Yeah, but that's my point. Like Nathan said, don't yell it from the chat. Come in and show us our error. If you're confident.
Sorry, no, there is no error. I am absolutely 100% in line with both National Geographic and the Wikipedia GIF that details it with a visual effect that's identical to both. I can detail that verbally as the not actual deflection observed from a non-inertial turning reference frame as you turn beneath an item travelling through an inertial reference frame. That is the verbalisation of both demonstrations, both National Geographic and Wikipedia. I am correct. There is no error. Earth just doesn't exhibit this effect. Nothing is flying away from me at 1,000 miles an hour on the equator. Launch a drone, it'll just go up and hover. If we had Coriolis effect, you go, oh, look at that, it looks like it's curving away from me at a fast rate. And the guy next to you would say, oh, it's just us turning underneath it. It's really only gone up in the air. You only pushed the up stick. It didn't fly away 1,000 miles an hour. It's just us turning beneath it. Just looks like it's drifting away. Said nobody ever, because it doesn't happen.
You ever getting that deja vu feeling, guys? We've had Chocolos, we come back, we're having bets, and this is now we're back to Coriolis. But these arguments have all been dealt with to the point, look, that we had a bit of fun pointing out the symptoms of Coriolis virus, which are all these things that are being discussed now, then blaspheming against their own priests. Yeah, self-contradiction. They're not formulating in scientific method. And what we're seeing today, point 3, the feeble attempts at distraction. It's just repetition. They're recycling their old arguments again, being their arguments they've already lost.
That's just a straw man, Adam. That's just a straw man. Go on, whoever it was from Discord.
Just saying they can't handle the fact that it's measured flat, and and that's why they haven't got a globe Earth, because it's measured flat, and it can't be a ball, and it's therefore not rotating, and they're just steering away from this fact all the time.
Yeah.
What they're doing... Sorry, Nathan, go on.
No, go. I was just agreeing with him. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, what they're doing is they're looking to have an argument about what the Coriolis effect is before they actually make any claims about their globe, instead of actually proving Earth rotation. Because they want to argue about the Coriolis effect instead of proving Earth rotation. And they want to do that forever. Because they know they can't prove Earth rotation.
It's the same, though, isn't it? It's the same thing again. It's like celestial navigation. They think they're arguing with us. But now, unlike celestial navigation, they're arguing with the textbooks. They're now trying to have an argument with the definition of Coriolis. For them to be able to move forwards, they have to redefine it, don't they? I say this globe blasphemy. They have to redefine it as globiolis to be able to move forwards. And so they've already lost. We've had these arguments. You've not been able to validate your point. We got to the point of you actually, as understanding that it is globiolis you're talking about, not Coriolis. We got full clarity on that. And that's when you binned it last time, boys. Yeah, you ran off once that was all pointed out, hence this picture. Yeah? But now we're back again. But we can go through it again and point out your errors again if you wish.
Well, hold on. This is the point that they're at, though, is if you don't accept globiolis as Coriolis and proof of Earth spin, then it's a straw man. That's where they're at.
I'll say it before I say it again. The position leaves them with a contradiction that should have them fighting with each other. Dan says, no reference frames, ruined. Here's an example with no drift. Craig says, drift. Earth turns under pendulum. 2 reference frames. So who's right? Well, if Craig's right and there is 2 reference frames, that's the actual globe Earth claim. So congratulations, Craig. Unlike Simon Dan, you actually understand what the globe claims. 2 reference frames. Coriolis drift as you turn beneath an inertial reference frame. However, if that's true and a pendulum shows we've got 2 reference frames, then Earth's turning underneath the pendulum and would also turn underneath an aeroplane, and that does not happen. If Simon Dan's right, and there's no reference frames, then he's got a violation of the first law of thermodynamics. He's got the Earth and atmosphere travelling as 1 reference frame, completely defeating the argument that globe Earth has Coriolis effect, because that requires 2, as Craig is claiming, but requires that everything in the atmosphere that's unbonded moves along with an Earth that's assumed to be turning, and there's no effect to observe. You go up higher and increase your velocity with relation to the ground below you. A first law of thermodynamics violation if you're claiming it with globe turn. And happy to violate the actual claim of Coriolis drift at 15 degrees an hour. That's the actual globe claim. Same with the pendulum.
Dan ruined Craig's reference frames.
Yeah, your reference frames are ruined, Craig, according to Dan. He can show you all sorts of examples with no drift. So what are you doing with your parlour trick?
Well, I've been asking everyone that brings this up with me for a good while now, any one of them that do that, I've asked them the same question. Okay, please provide for me the physical demonstration that I can replicate, right, of exactly what you're claiming, right, which would involve their conservation of momentum nonsense, all the rest of it. Now, on the globe side, there's plenty supposed engineering experts. You have Phil Bell, George Netchuk, and God knows, you have Blue Marble. He's a very good woodworker. I mean, there's plenty supposed expert engineers on their side. Yet, collectively, they cannot produce a physical demonstration of their claim. None of them. It should be easy to... If it's real, and it's only the Coriolis, as they call it, force, if it's a real thing, then you'll be able to demonstrate it on a small scale, and anyone will be able to replicate that demonstration. And I'm not talking about Foucault's pendulum, because that's begging the question. I'm talking about an actual demonstration of your actual claim that involves a sphere, it involves conservation of whatever momentum you're claiming today, because it changes. They won't even give me clarity on that. I ask them, any of them, which conservation of momentum are you claiming? And I was asked today, you tell me how many there is, and I'll tell you which one I'm claiming. That's what you're getting. Demonstrate your claims. They should be able to do it. There's loads of these special engineers, supposedly, don't they? Didn't George Nitschuk rat a guy out on our side, claiming he wasn't a proper engineer? Well, George, here is your chance. Prove your rotation. Create the demonstration for everyone, for the whole world to see.
Meanwhile, while you're out challenging anti-flat earthers to prove rotation, the effect is very simple and spans from the stars. So in the same way, a ball would move straight as you turn underneath it, watching it seem to curve. Well, that watching it seem to curve is precisely what they say the stars do. They're not moving. Earth's turning underneath. Sound familiar? Yeah, that's a non-inertial and inertial reference frame. That would be the stars seeming to move because you're claimed to turn beneath them. That's Coriolis Effect. DOS, 2 reference frames. Likewise, Earth turning underneath the inertial reference frame of the pendulum, tying both ground and sky, 2 reference frames, and drift. That's the claim. So if they say, oh, well, no drift to observe, why are the stars moving then? Oh, because we're turning underneath them. That would be 2 reference frames, yeah? And you try and expand that out to Earth turns underneath bullets, so that long-distance targets need correction for the fact that Earth is claimed to turn underneath them. That's what you're claiming. Earth turns underneath stuff, according to you. Until we point out that would shorten flight times, and a flight from Charlotte, North Carolina to Los Angeles would only take about an hour and a half, because Earth would be turning underneath it. That does not happen.
It's just dishonesty at this point. If you asked them something that was clearly blue, what color it was, they'd claim black. It's not a lack of understanding. Coriolis is defined. It was in the 19th century they were firing cannonballs straight up into the air. And they would return to where they were fired from. It's the doublespeak. They rely on the doublespeak.
Well, Nathan defines it so clearly. I mean, I really can't believe we're in this argument, if you want to call it that. Jeez.
We're not, are we, Neil? We are getting roped into the graphs of their cognitive dissonance. Yeah, and they're trying to use us to resolve it. Yeah, we know there's resolution, but they're just coming at us. Yeah, trying to keep their worldview together. And you can see the only way with Coriolis they can do is just to contradict and deny fundamentally the definition. It's the only way they can get Coriolis into their worldview is to deny the actual definition, because the reality would deny reality. Yeah, would deny the effects we observe. So they have to redefine Coriolis to allow it to happen in their ball model.
But it's worse than that, Adam, because they don't just deny the definition of the Coriolis effect. As of today, they're denying the actual physical demonstration of the Coriolis effect. They're denying that the ball being thrown over the roundabout while their roundabout is moving. So the ball is moving in a straight path, and the roundabout is moving, so someone on the roundabout will see the ball appearing the curve. They're denying that. They're denying that they're saying that's a straw man and it has nothing to do with their globe, because the roundabout is supposedly 2D and the globe is 3D. This is where they're at.
I love that. That's hilarious. Yeah, that's why I kept repeating it. It's a straw man to assert that Earth has experiences Coriolis. That's awesome.
Well, they're also denying Neil the graph.
That's correct. He says Earth turns underneath a football. It took a deflection. What's that deflection? That would be not actual drift observed from a non-inertial turning reference frame. Ball travels straight seems to take a deflection because Earth's turning beneath it. As he explains, assisted by Earth's rotation. So assisted by Earth's rotation means that the ground moved under the ball. It's just that simple. Of course, if the ground turned under the ball to assist that field goal, then Earth would also turn under the blimp filming the game, and it would drift away. Likewise, a flight from Charlotte, North Carolina to Los Angeles would only take an hour and a half if Earth was turning underneath it. It isn't.
Yeah, I mean, we can literally.
Sorry, mate.
Sorry, go on.
I was just going to say,
saying-
and it would drift under my drone. It doesn't. It just hovers right in the same spot.
Just saying, we've moved on from Coriolis. We're now measuring large distances of Earth using elevation angles. We've gone past that point now. We're measuring the Earth flat now.
Yeah, and showing how your sphere that you want to assume has an axis and a spin value was developed from flat Earth elevation angle measurements in the first place. So while you're still begging the question of an axis with an R value that's debunked in 2020, we're pointing out how your globe came from a flat Earth. I think we're past this indeed, One Deck.
So that's why they're bringing it back, huh? I see the plan.
No, Neil was right when he said it there some way back, that they're going to start bringing back up arguments from years ago, because that's all they have, because they were officially destroyed. They officially got absolutely decimated by us. And so that's why they have to bring us back into, they're trying to bring us back into the weeds of arguments that they lost time and time again, to the point where they want us to argue about the Coriolis effect while they deny the definition and the physical demonstration of it. They have to completely deny the whole thing and recontextualize it into some sophistry and nonsense. And when you ask them to demonstrate it, they can't do it. But they want to have that argument because they know that they can't prove, they know we've destroyed them. There's no way to do it.
Hey, let me say something. Virus is saying that we should have a Coriolis quiz. Let me tell you something. Nathan could write the Coriolis quiz and give you dummies a test.
Yeah, he's asking me on the globe model, where would the Coriolis effect be most strongest? And I have to ask him, what does he mean by strongest? Because if I go one way, he'll change the definition of strongest and say,
strong.
You got it wrong. I meant this.
Stop. It's a not actual deflection. So let's just bring the bloody diagram back up for the third time. Sorry, when you say strongest, it's not actually deflecting, Anthony. So how can it be stronger, weaker when it's not actual?
I just want to know what he means when he says the word strongest before we go any further, because we need to define these terms. And if he's going to say, because like the problem is, from his perspective, if I answer it one way, he'll change the meaning of the word and go, didn't mean that one. I meant this definition. So we need to define these terms, but he doesn't like definitions. So it's never
okay.
going to happen.
I've put it up on screen. So when he says strongest, do you mean the visual appearance most exaggerated? That's not qualifiable in terms of strength, because it's
I don't know,
not actual, aka apparent. So what? How strong will it curve? No, it doesn't. Nothing's drifting on a sphere Earth because we're not stood on one. Planes haven't got reduced flight times because men stand on the ground going, oh, look, that plane looks like it's curving. And the guy in the plane goes, woohoo, Earth's turning underneath me, shortening my flight time massively. That doesn't happen. So the real trajectory is straight. So when you say strongest, it's not changing ever. If you made this roundabout 50,000 times bigger and 50,000 times faster, it would still travel in a straight line.
I think he meant to say the most, where the deflection would be the most.
There isn't any deflection. It only appears to deflect. So if you're watching a plane from a roundabout on a school playground and you look up, does it deflect more because from your point of view spinning faster and faster, it's corkscrewing faster and faster? No. The fact that you're spinning on a roundabout watching a plane look like it's corkscrewing through the air, the plane's not affected one smegging inch by it. Strongest? Are these people demented?
So the apparent, right? The apparent deviation, when it is the most apparent deviation.
The most apparent? Yeah. Oh, the most visually looking like it's doing something it isn't.
That's everywhere.
I think he means the strongest is in like the tangential speed, like the 1,000 miles an hour bit. That's what I think he means.
That is what he means, because he doesn't know what the hell Coriolis effect is. He's detailing. He's asking you about Coriolis effect when he's detailing the globiolis force. It would be the apparent deflection would be the same everywhere, because you are claimed to be on a 15-degree an hour rotating reference frame. So the apparent deflection will be apparently deflecting the same everywhere.
He thinks it's stronger in some areas, though, but I don't understand what he means when he says stronger.
He's just an idiot.
Hold on.
You can't qualify it in terms of strength. There's a claimed axial rotation of 15 degrees an hour, and it's claimed anything that we observe in the non-inertial turning reference frame, from the non-inertial turning reference frame, will drift at 15 degrees an hour. That's a constant rate no matter where you are. It's 15 degrees an hour. It doesn't change where you move. However, we don't observe any degrees an hour. It never happens. I never look up at an aeroplane and see it taking a curved path when it actually travels straight. They just travel straight and look like they travel straight. Why? Because Earth is not turning beneath them. If it was, it would shorten the flight time.
That's right, 15 degrees an hour. No stronger, no weaker.
The only thing going on here is that you're giving any kind of credence to known liars who've lost every debate up to this point. I don't even know why we even talk about these people.
Refresher.
Well, because flat earthers are getting sucked up in it.
Yeah,
It's
refresher
yeah,
courses.
exactly. It's highlighting the confusion tactics that are being applied that pull people into the reeds. That's why we've got to do it.
Well,
No, I don't have a-
Are we now asking that when we don't observe any drift wherever we are, yeah, what's the difference and why we should see more drift, but we don't see any drift whatsoever? Is that what they've got us arguing on? This is the
It's a nonsense.
We're just getting drawn into their bullshittery, frankly.
Yeah, it's nonsense.
Well, that's
Yeah,
my
where
point.
do
That's
we?
Go on, Brian.
Sorry, Ken. What they're asking is, where do we not observe the drift the strongest?
Yes, that's what they're really asking.
Yeah.
Where do we not observe any drift, actual or otherwise, anywhere ever the strongest?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
That's what the question really is.
At the North Pole, of course.
Oh, no, it's the equator, Arwin.
And that's what they want, Arwin, isn't it?
Yeah, you asked where we
Yeah,
don't
because
actually observe the
that's-
apparent deviation the most.
Exactly.
That's a
That's
tacit
what they want.
acceptance that the Earth's rotating from you.
Yes. They want us arguing over whether it's at the equator or the North Pole, completely ignoring the fact that there's no evidence of it rotating anywhere.
Right. And the majority of the non-rotation happens at the North Pole. That was my statement.
Depends on how you're defining the strongest, though, doesn't it? That's why we have to have definitions for these terms that he's using. He's using a vague term to describe something that in his head he thinks he understands. But when it comes to explanation for the definition, he doesn't want to define it because he wants to be able to say, "Ha, got you, I meant the other one." That's all he wants to do.
It's not vague. It's just not relevant to what's being described. It's not a term that has any relevancy.
This is why they can't join, because they know that if they do join and they start spouting their stuff on microphone, they're going to die really quick. Hence, stay in chat.
With that, I'm going to say, if you are watching this on either Nathan Oakley 1980 or Nathan Oakley Premiering streams, then stay tuned, as there will be an after show to follow. Unfortunately, if you are watching this live, this is where we bid you farewell. So a huge, massive, enormous thank you to all of you who smashed the super chat, liked, commented, shared, subscribed, joined as a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member, and all that good stuff. I've been Nathan Oakley. Stay tuned if you're watching on an after show, and I'll see you all in the next video.
What a lovely day!